you look at your bio online and it says you're from Washington State. And I had to kind of look up where that
Mm,
little town was. It's just north of Portland.
it's tiny, yes.
And, but you're not from Washington State.
I am
So
from
maybe you could talk a little bit about how you got to Washington State.
yeah, so my journey to the United States started early 2008. And, it begins with my family and me, my two older siblings, Abby and Abraham. And essentially, the story's a little complicated, but it begins with, my family. And, they got to a point where I guess they could not take care of us. So, they wanted a better future for us. So, they allowed us to come to the United States, and that's through adoption. And like I said, in 2008, a woman from Washington State by the name of Julia, she, reached out to the adoption agency in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the capital. And through there, she found us. And yeah, she's like just amazing, awesome woman, who
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I'm gonna take you and give you a family." So that's pretty much where it started.
And you were 8 years old, so you have a very strong memory of growing up in Ethiopia.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a lot younger than my two older siblings who are a little older. So absolutely, I have when I went back, I still remember a lot of the things, my friends, and my family. Unfortunately, I've forgotten a lot of the language, but yeah, absolutely, I still got those memories from when I was a kid.
And growing up in Ethiopia, we had talked previously about running being part of the culture there.
Mhm.
And I was trying to come up with an analogy of the Southeast being, I mean, kids grow up here with football, right? They
Right,
start in Pop Warner and they
right,
watch it on TV with mom and dad and they go to tailgating. I mean, and it kind of gets in your DNA pretty early.
absolutely.
How so does running kind of get in your DNA in Ethiopia?
I mean, it's not like here in the United States, you got just so many different sports that you could be part of.
Right.
In Ethiopia, I think it's just soccer or you're running. There's not
Okay.
many other things, and usually, and like football, you said it's a very big a thing that happens and that goes on here in the United States. And similar to that, running is a huge culture, and a lot of people either they see it on TV or they are part of track clubs and things like that. So that's where it kind of starts. And it's huge running community. A lot of world class athletes that come out from both Ethiopia
Right.
and Kenya, like two distant rival countries.
And is it always distance? Because the Jamaicans are known for their sprinters, right?
Right,
And
right, yeah.
Kenya and Ethiopia are distance runners.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some great steeplers that come out of Ethiopia too, but
Mm,
predominantly it's the distance, and a lot of that could be said because of the elevation and the training ground there in Ethiopia. That plays to a great advantage in distance running.
gotcha. And so, Silas, let's kind of go to Washington State then.
Okay.
And you're in elementary school, and it's probably not the most racially diverse place, but I don't want to assume that. But go ahead and tell me about you showing up to school as the kid from Ethiopia.
Yeah. The first day, I think, it's just so strange.
Mm,
We had just gotten to the United States. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the culture. I didn't have any friends. I basically knew nothing, and I was just being thrown into a class of, a bunch of little other kids.
yeah,
But at the same time, it was strange because I was the only one that looked like me in the entire classroom, and there's certain, I think, comfort that you have when you're around people who, speak your language, know your culture, that look like you. And I think for a lot of my academic career growing up, I was always the one, like I'd say probably, 80, 90% of the time, I was one of the few Black students in the classroom. And yeah, it's sometimes a little disheartening, a little uncomfortable, but I try to knit that get to me. But yeah, absolutely, I'd say a lot of the times I was one of the only few Black kids in the classrooms.
and moving to the United States from Ethiopia, um, you're you're inheriting a history here in the United States, and it's a history that you don't know about yet, that that suddenly is on the weight of your shoulders, and you're like, kind of, what is this? And what what did I get myself into here? Because this, I have no idea of the way race and ethnicity translate for white America. And could you talk a little bit about sort of your coming to realization of, oh, not only is this a different culture, but it's a different culture based on what I look like?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the reason, we came to the United States was, in hopes for a better future, in hopes to, to be better ourselves. But, when I get to the United States and I realized that just because I look different than others, meant that, that I could be treated differently, that, I wasn't considered equal. That never really crossed my mind. And I don't think people in my country knew that was the truth, or that's what's going on. But, the realization hit me when I was young, and to like look back and think that, wow, because I look different, maybe because my hair is different, my skin color is different, maybe I speak different. That meant that I wasn't just as good as anybody else. And that was a very, very hard realization to come to realize.
And in coming to that realization, how did you negotiate it? How did you, because you can go a lot of different ways here, right? That sense of internalized inferiority can become overpowering, and you could become very isolated very quickly, especially coming from a whole different world. Right. But you did not, you went a different way. And I'm curious to know how you negotiated that, and who helped you negotiate it.
Right. Well, like I knew that I couldn't let that define who I am, because I want to be above that, and I wasn't okay with the idea that I am less than. And I think one of the tools that helped me realize is sports, and I started very young. In fact, before I was a runner, I was a basketball player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's odd, but I love basketball. That was my sport, and
okay.
I think I made a lot of friends through that.
Okay.
Both black, white, it didn't matter. Anybody who was out at recess, shooting baskets, they were my friends.
Well, I want you on my team for running fast breaks, because you could just run past us all day long.
We love fast breaks, love the screen rolls and all that. So
yeah,
absolutely. Sports, I think, was my key to let myself not worry about things that were uncomfortable to me. That was one of my, I guess, masks, you could say, that allowed me to not worry about whatever other people may think, because it was one of my escapes, I guess I could say, that allowed me to be without having to worry about what other people see or think.
And your white mom, tell me about your white mom. I mean, this is so unique in your story.
Right. She's an amazing woman, absolutely God sent. If it's not, for her, I obviously would not be here in this situation. She has given up a lot for me and my siblings. Like I said, our story, she adopted us from Ethiopia, but before we even got to the United States, she's already had 4 other kids adopted from Haiti.
Wow.
So there's 7 of us, all black children with a single white mom in a household. And just recently, she has adopted another little white girl. So she's got that little mix now. But no, she's just an amazing lady, an awesome woman, and just always encouraging me. And I think one of the reasons why I'm here, like I said, is that, and she immediately recognized my, my talents in running and basketball. And she was one of my very first coaches to help me realize that, they had the talent, and she instilled that hard work in me. And I definitely would say that a lot of where I am today is because of her.
And then Silas, at some point in either middle school or high school, somebody perhaps beyond your mom said, wow, you got some serious talents here. Let's go cultivate them. Was it a mentor? Was it a coach? Was it, because you're an elite athlete in a Division I setting, and that doesn't just happen. that usually is there's a family, there's a scaffolding there that gets you here. And I'm curious to know in your own story, when does that really kind of start in a serious way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as throughout middle school, my middle school didn't actually have organized sports. And so a lot of it was just, like I said, playing at recess or playing with friends.
Okay.
And like I said, my mom kind of recognized that early on. And she's a PE teacher actually at my middle school.
I
So
see.
she knows all my friends and all the teachers and things like that.
Keeping a real close eye on you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But one of the things we do in PE is we run a time trial for a mile. And, usually I was one of the first people to finish, and it got to a point eventually where I actually set the school record.
Wow.
And as I was getting to high school, she helped me realize, look, you have the talent. I think you need to go and try out cross country. At the time, running was like, I liked it, but it wasn't anything I wanted to pursue. Basketball was a thing.
Okay.
And she's always told me, yeah, go try for cross country. It's like, no, I want to play football with my friends. So I tried football. Didn't go very well. And then that spring, I went out and tried track, and that's pretty much where it took off. But yeah, absolutely. My mom was the first person I'd give all the credits to help me get here. And then in high school, there's an amazing woman by the name of Angela Shields. She's the head cross country coach and the distance coach
Okay.
at Ridgefield High School. And she's had some really amazing assistants along with her that helped me to get to where I am. Her name is Natasha Burris, and Ron Homer is another great mentor that I had in high school, who also helped me develop as a runner.
And West Coast and Oregon in particular has an incredible running culture, but you weren't really recruited by the Oregon State, University of Oregon. So kind of walk us through. I know you're not to Florida State yet in the narrative here, but
Yeah.
You're 18, you're graduating high school, and who's looking at you?
Right. Yeah, that was a very hectic moment in my running career. Was towards the end of high school, where I had to pick a school, and the things that the one I wanted to do was I wanted to stay close to my family, my home. And I've reached out to, like schools like Gonzaga, schools like Portland State, but just financially and academically, it just did not work out. And I was in a place of just wonder, like, where am I going to be? And a lot of prayer and things like that went down. And eventually I found Lipscomb. That kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting them. I wasn't planning on to, travel hundreds and hundreds of miles away from home to completely a different side of the world. So,
I was going to say we're in the thousands at Lipscomb, friend.
Yeah. Far away.
Nashville's a long way from
long
Washington State. Yeah,
absolutely.
And so Lipscomb came knocking, and you were ready.
Yeah.
And
so
you're moving to this is the deep South now from kind of progressive West Coast. So that's the way we like to think of it. Yeah. And did you have kind of any moments of reckoning with, I'm in a different world here in Nashville, Tennessee, in ways that Washington State isn't like, or there's new things for you to negotiate as a young Black man on that campus?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of I think the scariest moment is, and thrilling at the same time, is that, I'm given an opportunity to do what I love.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, maximize on that. And I want to use that potential to, one, compete at the highest level, and two, get myself an education. And I think running has a lot to do with, giving me that opportunity, and I didn't want to waste that. And, both me and my family, my mom especially, we had conversations. Hey, look, you're going to a part of the world where, you may be looked at differently. You may be treated differently just because how you look, what you wear, how you wear your hair, and things like that. And I had to come to a realization that, this could be a reality for me. And so, coming in, I had to come up with the mindset that, okay, I'm gonna have to be tough. I'm gonna have to realize that, the thing's gonna happen, and I just have to be on top of it. So absolutely, there's a scare of, yeah, I'm going to the deep South where, people of color are not treated the same.
And so you're on Lipscomb's campus. You're running successfully. Academics are working for you. Um, One of the things you told me that I'd never thought about before in terms of training is that when you as a runner are putting down 70, 80, 90, God forbid, 100 miles a week, you are out in the community. You are visible in ways that I, as a golfer or a basketball player or a football player, right, we're confined to a space, and you're not. And so you were telling me, you're going and exploring Nashville on foot, quite quite literally,
Absolutely, like every
and
day.
and people are seeing you, and you're seeing them. And there were some moments of being seen that tell us about being seen in Nashville.
Right. And I think this goes beyond Nashville. I mean, some of that was also experienced in Washington, my home, and maybe here in Florida too. But yeah, one of the things as a runner is that you're not in any closed space. You're not protected from anything, and
Right.
everything is you're out in the open. You're unprotected. You're vulnerable, and one of the unfortunate things, that I've been part of is, people will be driving by in their cars, and they would just be screaming, yelling vulgar things. They'd be just driving dangerously close
Mm.
or trying to like run me off the road. I've been flipped off. I've been called words. I've been, spat at. So some very scary real world experiences where, you know, you like really it's just scared for your life essentially. And it's terrifying. And these are, a reality of being someone of color, especially in the running sport, because you're seen as almost a threat, really.
Silas, do you on our campus go out of your way? And I know it's different now because we're in a different time with COVID, but did you go out of your way to kind of run with white friends, run with white teammates, just to kind of, as a sense of, I'm not going to go out there by myself because it's not worth the risk, even though perhaps you might want to train by yourself. I'm gonna buddy up with my white teammates just because I don't want to be that visible.
Right, and that's such a scary thing to admit. And we've read about the story with the kid in Georgia. He was out and jogging, and he gets
Yeah,
shot
Ahmad
down,
Arbery. Yeah,
or I don't, yeah, he's just running, not bothering anybody, doing his own thing, and then to know that that could be a reality for me. That is it's just a terrifying realization. And yeah, there's a comfort in running a group and feeling like you're part of a whole group and you're not alone, and that you don't have to be afraid, you don't have to be scared. There's definitely a comfort in running with a white friend rather
yeah,
than running from a black friend,
yeah.
because I don't know the reasons, but there is a reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's this crazy default white America that sees a young black man running through my suburbia white neighborhood, running really fast. What's he running from? And the fact that that's kind of a default question, as opposed to, oh, there's a young black fellow running really fast, must be, I wonder what he's training for, right? That is, what questions do we have, and why do we even have a question when you come flying through my neighborhood, right?
Right. Like, yeah, the idea that like that he's out exercising, that
Yeah,
he's out to better himself, that he's
right,
out there to get fitter. I
right,
don't think that crosses the mind. Rather, it's, what is he running from? What is he hiding?
right.
Who is he running away from? Things like that. Those are things that I'm constantly aware of, and it's just it it's very discomforting, I would say, to know that you're conscious, you're aware of. All right, I'm gonna have to run this route because I know if I go this way, there are certain people that they may say things or do things. So it's very unnerving. Very.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. The moment that we find ourselves in right now is a moment on campus anyway, where black athletes um, have a platform that they're just learning about, it seems like, or perhaps not learning about, but using. And as somebody who teaches this, I'm in, the glory day of the black athlete in this country is always the late 60s, right? It's leading up to Mexico City and the Olympic Games, and Tommy Smith and John Carlos, right? And the Black Power salute. And gosh, you wish there was so much more than that, because from my point of view, athletes on big campuses like Florida State have enormous platforms, which translates potentially to social power, social capital. And gosh, wouldn't it be great if they could speak out? And it seems like now we're in that moment where Black athletes in particular on college campuses are speaking out. Could you talk about kind of the tipping point in your own, you and I are having this conversation July 2nd, 2020. And July 2nd, 2019, we weren't having this conversation. So something has changed. And I want to kind of get at what has changed and what particular for SilasGriffith has changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's been a lot of violence, a lot of scare, a lot of things that has opened up our eyes, and it keeps happening, and we're constantly aware of it. And as a student athlete, especially in the NCAA, as a Black student athlete, you have a platform, you have a special voice that speaks to a community, a certain amount of people. And as a student athlete, you want to use that voice, you want to use that platform to better your community. And one of the things that I am involved in I'm trying to start is this program called Black Student Athlete Association. Okay. And essentially, this program is to, like you said, help the student athletes give a voice, let them know that they are on a platform, that they have the power to not only speak out against injustices that they see, not only on the field, in the classroom, but also in their community, and be a voice to the problems that are happening, and to have that power to address those things. And I want to help student athletes realize that, look, you are in a position to sway how this could play out. You are in a position to make a change, make a difference. And I think a lot of other student athletes are finally realizing, and all across the NCAA. A specific example of this would be what happened at Mississippi and the football team. They saw a problem, and they sought out a solution, and they used their position as student athletes to voice that. And look where we're at. There's big change coming. And yeah, I wanna essentially do the same thing here to help student athletes realize that you are important, you have a voice, you have power, and I want you to help us to become one organization to fight that.
I love it, Silas. Do you have any issues in particular as a group that you might want to work on? And finding your voice is important. And my follow-up question to that is, okay, yeah, finding your voice is super important. When you find it, what do you want to talk about? And especially, I want to kind of push here in terms of the larger campus. What do you want your fellow white student body, Seminoles, teachers, staff? We're one big community at FSU. And what do you want to work on with us?
Right. I think the biggest thing would be understanding what is going on right now. And there's a reason why it's going on. And to help, and we can be the voice, the people that have these conversations with the faculty, the coaches, the administration. But essentially, we want to let them know that there is a problem, and that we want to help that problem by becoming the bridge between our community in Tallahassee, the community in athletics, and you guys. And we want to be the bridge in between the two. And I think it's important that not only the coaches, the the administration, the professors, they have an understanding of, just cultural humility, cultural sensitivity, of issues, not just an American university. It's got students from all over the world. And I think it's vitally important that professors understand, coaches understand, the teaching staff, the administrations understand that, there's a certain approach to speaking to these students, these athletes that are coming from all over the world, because what's appropriate here in the United States, here in Tallahassee, may not be appropriate. People who are coming from New Zealand, Australia, certain parts of Africa, like we have students from all over the world. And I think it's important that teachers see the person as an individual rather than a large group, and cater to that individual as one person.
And I'm with you, and I love what you're saying. For me, who's got just so much bandwidth during the course of a day, just like you, my question back to you, Silas, is, okay, I'm willing to have that conversation. How do we do it? Do we do it through a series of workshops? Do we do it through some one-on-ones? Do we do it in a classroom? Because I think people like me are with you, and it's just a matter of how, right? How do we go ahead and take the next step with you, with this new organization? How do we do it?
Right. I think
I realize you don't have necessarily answers yet, but I wanted to kind of talk through it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being aware and be willing to have that conversation, because without those two things, then you cannot have this platform. And so, yeah, just be open to it and be willing to have the conversation. And in my personal life, an example, I think I've had many conversations that went really well and that went really south, where I had conversation where I got to where I want to be, what I wanted to say, and I got to say it, and the other person listened, and then I listened to them, and they got to say what they wanted to say. And then on the other hand, it was just a wall. We're talking to a wall. Like nobody was observing, like just taking in anything. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is kind of meet the person who you're speaking to, where they are. If you're a runner, hey, if you don't have friends of color or people of color, you don't know, just go out of your way to get to know them. And like I said, if you're a runner, hey, let's go for a run, let's go jog, let's talk. If you're someone who enjoys drinking coffee, okay, let's go for a coffee. Let's go talk. Let's have a conversation. It doesn't just have to be about race then and there. It could eventually lead up to that, but basically,
because that's a heavy way to start a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So go out of your way to like befriend, be the person that is willing to have that conversation. But yeah, just meet them where you are, whatever you're comfortable with. If you're someone that likes to cook, have them over for dinner, have them over for lunch, breakfast, whatever it is. There's so many different ways that you can have this sort of talk.
So Silas, if you're hosting me for Ethiopian food, what are we having?
One of my favorites is it's called Dorawood, and it's delicious. But I'm an awful cook, so I'm gonna have to go to an actual restaurant where we can have that.
Okay, got you. Well, what I was thinking, and I totally am with you on this, is if you're in my class, right? And I know you're in my class because athletics is going to let me know I've got a student athlete in my class, right, and we do a great job of looking after you and letting the professors know. And I find out, oh, Silas is running the 3,200 this week here at the home meet, and I want to go watch him, right? So there's part of it is just me taking an interest in you and my students and showing up and watching you do your thing, and then seeing you in class the next Tuesday and saying, hey, Silas, I want to go for a run with you. And I'm not going to compete with you, which is absurd. I'm going to hang out and learn a little bit of your craft. You get to come to my class and watch me and my craft, right? Yeah. Twice a week, 3 times.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna go experience your craft, and we're gonna work up to that conversation about whatever that's heavy and that's on your heart and you wanna tell me. But I think you're right. I think those initial exposures of meeting people where they are, meeting athletes where they are, is urgent.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of times there's a stereotype of, athletes. They're dumb, they're not smart, they're
They're
this.
coddled. They get special breaks. They right.
Yes, yes, yes. And I don't believe that for half a second, because I am a student athlete, and
I was too, and
yeah,
I know it's not true.
exactly, exactly. And so I think it's just also just trying to break down that stereotype, that preconceived notion. And as a professor, as a teacher, like you said, try to meet us where we are. You know, I don't think professors understand that the amount of hours, days that goes into our preparation on sports. I don't think they understand the amount of time that we spent
Right.
outside of the classroom, just
Yeah.
getting ready for our sport, getting ready to be fit enough to be, to represent our school. And then on top of that, having to study,
Yeah.
to do our assignments, our classwork, and we're traveling. There's a lot of time management that goes into being a student athlete. And I think,
Yeah.
like you said, meet us where we are, try to understand, that what's on our table. And we understand that you guys are, dealing with just hundreds of students going in and out of your classroom. So like you said it out perfectly, meet us where we are, and just try to understand that, we're more than what you see us to be.
And so here's a hard one, Silas, that people in my tribe have to negotiate. So let's say I have some student athletes in my class, and let's say they're good students. They come to class and they sit up front, and I see them falling asleep a lot. Now the teacher in me is offended by that, right? Because I'm practicing my craft, and this kid in the second row has the temerity to fall asleep. And I kind of want to take a step back from that and say, this kid's working 80 hours a week as a student athlete, and they're just flat out exhausted. And I'm going to have to raise my game and reach out to that kid perhaps to kind of say, look, I know you're tired. I know this is hard. But I don't want you falling asleep, because you're missing, right? You're missing important stuff. You're imperiling your abilities as a student athlete. And, but to just begin to understand what that kid's going through in terms of, if they just went on a 12-mile run, and this is the last class of their day, and they're exhausted, and they got study hall after this class. I mean, so much of your time is spoken for. I mean, like every minute of your day is practically spoken. I have a lot of Silas time.
Absolutely.
That concerns me. That's a whole other issue. But you're an athlete that trains year round. But then just to have that conversation of, I'm not going to be offended by you falling asleep in my class as much as I might single you out and say, hey, we need to talk about ways to keep you engaged, because I want your experience and your stories in my class too. So when I have a student athlete in my class, I'm keenly aware of that. But there's all kinds of moments that I can call on you, Silas, to talk about X, Y, and Z that dovetails with my lecture. In communication, I mean, this can be a lot of different things. But student athletes have some really unique perspectives on all kinds of things. But if you're sleeping in the second row, I can't get you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as student athletes, we're encouraged to sit out front, because you carry a certain weight as not just a student, but as an athlete. You represent the university, and there are certain things that I don't think the professors understand, that we bear this weight of, not only representing our school, but the team. And yeah, like you said, we would, there are days where I would be coming from practice, and I would have class in 30 minutes, and I have to rush to the training room, do a little stretch, get to the shower, clean up, and then my class is like 10 minutes away, and maybe I'm late, or I'm just exhausted from workouts and weights and studying all night, and then I get to a classroom and I'm just exhausted and I'm falling asleep. Yeah, those are the things that goes on, and it happens. And I think
And my
as
tribe can't be offended by that. We have to meet each other halfway.
right, exactly. And I think that's where one of our focus would be as Black Student Athlete Association, is to have that communication between the professors and the student athletes, to let them know, look, these are the things we're going with, these are the things that we're doing, these are the things that we're dealing with, and we know we're maybe we're tired, we're falling asleep, or we're not paying attention in class. It's not any disrespect, it's not any
Right. Right.
lack of willing to learn. It's just we're exhausted, you know.
Right. Well, and it doesn't even take into consideration the fact that y'all are injured all the time,
Right.
and you're in pain, right? You're in pain, you're tired, you're stressed. Those are hard things that, again, from my side of the desk, I got to at least begin to understand that.
Yeah, there are just so many different factors of being a student athlete, you know. And obviously injury is one of the most devastating and real part of being an athlete. And, you know, we spend a lot of time just not to be hurt, not to be injured. Right. But when those things do happen, you know, as athletes, that's our niche, that's our identity, that's who we are. And when that is kind of taken away from you for the moment, that does things to you. And you know, for my personal example, you know, like there would be times where I'd be hurt and I'd just be devastated. And, you know, it makes me feel a certain way because I can't do what I love and I can't do what I'm talented at. And now, rather than focusing on how can I be better, I'm worried about I need to get back to where I was. And that's spending a lot of time in the training room with the trainers, in the gym, you know, just to get caught up to where I was. And then there's that fear of, am I ever going to get back to where I was?
Right.
You know, can I still compete to the level I was at? And being worried that, you know, my teammates are getting better than me. Can I catch up with them? So there's a lot of little things that go on that I don't think that people understand.
And so, Silas, moving from kind of the professors at Florida State to students at Florida State, and that you interact with on a daily basis, I think, yes, having you in class and having the class know that you're a student athlete, not to ostracize you, but to do precisely the opposite, is an important first step. But what else, perhaps outside of the classroom, can we be doing better on campus?
I'd say one of the biggest thing is community involvement. I think that, you know, we are part of the community. We're not independent. We are codependent, and, you know, the community reflects who we are as a school, and the school reflects who we are as a community. And I think one of the biggest things that I would love for it to happen is not only the community, but also alumni of FSU to be involved with the school. And I think it would be fantastic if we had a panel, a board of people that would come and speak to us as not only student athletes, but just students, and it's open to everybody. I think there's certain encouragement, power in knowing that, you know, someone's gone through the exact same thing, and then that they're out there in the community being successful. Mm-hmm. That person would come back to the university and tell their story, share their story. Hey, I was a student athlete. Hey, I was a student. Hey, I'm a Black student athlete. I'm a Black student. These are my experiences in the real world. I'm going to come back and share that with you. And if we had a platform for that to happen, I think that would be a very encouraging start.
Yeah, that seems like something very doable that is right here in our own community. I'm thinking of my good friend Fred Flowers, who essentially integrated FSU varsity athletics. Fred and his sister Dobby are good friends and part of the Civil Rights Institute here at Florida State. And we've done a little bit of that work already through Ashton Henderson.
Absolutely.
And gosh, he's good. He's a good guy, good friend. And yeah, that intergenerational walking through what I went through on campus, I think is so important. And establishing those links of what happened in the late 60s on our campus and what happened in the 70s on our campus and how things got easier or harder on campus. And this is what I went through, and this is what you're not going through, but you're going through some things that I didn't have to go through too. And so to be able to have that dialogue, not just one way, right? I think let me tell you what it was like when I went through is important, but then for you to speak back, to be able to say, That's really interesting. Here's my reality, and here's how it's changed. And hopefully it's changed for the better, but maybe not.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Right now, I think my generation, the generation next, we have been the most diverse, the most inclusive, the most involved, in my perspective. And I think, we can do a lot being proactive in things like civil rights and things like student athlete involvement, things like being speaking out in our communities. And I think it would also, like I said, just absolutely be encouraging to not only voice our opinion, but learn from the people who've gone through the same thing in that platform, as I've said. So absolutely.
So let me ask you a hard question. Not that any of these has been easy, but let me ask you a real hard one that my department, my unit on campus is trying to figure out is one of my frustrations as a teacher. I might be teaching a class of 80 to 100 kids. And day one, I oftentimes look out at my students and I have them write down their names and where they're from. And it's the very, very rare class where I get one or two young black men. And so we want to look like Florida, and we're not even the state of Florida, and we're not even close. And so we're concerned to kind of say, what can we be doing as a unit on campus that makes us look like Florida, and is giving more opportunities, is creating more opportunities for not only minority student athletes, but minorities in general. Because right now we're just not there. Numerically, we're just not.
Right.
And
And
so
yeah, yeah,
we're trying to figure this out, but I think we also need to be talking with fellow students because you're walking the walk right now and you've seen it. You've been in the high schools. And so to kind of say, okay, so what do we need to be doing better?
absolutely. Yeah, I would really agree. Even from Washington to Nashville, I think Tallahassee is far more integrated, far more diverse, and I've seen a lot more people of color, but not only African American descent, but from just all different walks of life. And as you said, I've been here 1 year now, and I've probably taken anywhere from 13 to 15 classes. And in those classes, in a whole year, I have only had one professor of color.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
I'm surprised you've had one, frankly. I'm glad you have, but that
yeah,
doesn't surprise me at all.
exactly. And that's disheartening, and to know that like the university doesn't reflect the community, the people, the majority of the people that are out here. And I think one of the things that FSU as a school can do better is, like as I've already said, implementing cultural sensitivity and ability programs within the educational department, where the professors can learn a little bit more about their students and where they're from, but also hiring more professors of color. I think there's a level of comfort when you walk into a classroom and you're a student of color and you see a professor of color. There's an empowerment, there's an encouragement, there is something that says, look, he's made it. I can strive to be just as good. Um, and I think that's one thing that has not been considered. And I would absolutely love in the next few years when I'm an alumni, like I look back and see, yeah, they've made a change. There's a vast majority of people of color from different walks of life that isn't just predominantly white males that are professors. I think that's one thing that FSU can do to help its community.
Yeah, and FSU on paper in their strategic plan, item number 3 is becoming more diverse as a student body and as a faculty. And so in theory, we're committed to it. And I think our leadership is committed to it. And I want to see it. I mean, it's one thing to go from a piece of paper to having those black faculty, having those faculty of color in front of students. And there's a lot of challenges there. I don't want to say it's easy. It's not. It's more than just posting a job ad. There's a whole layer of retention, recruitment that's hard. But we got to do what's hard.
Right, exactly. It's the hard things that makes the moment worth what it is.
As a
It's
runner, I appreciate you saying this.
it's yeah, like nothing ever is made in comfort that has ever turned out to be successful. It's you going into those hard moments, having those tough conversations, facing whatever it is in the moment, face to face. And I think that's one of the most powerful things, is to be uncomfortable, because comfort is not going to get you where you want to be.
Right.
It's discomfort. It's the hard things that challenge us and that make us greater. Yeah, I understand it's challenging, but I think it's something that needs to be done, and it will do us just tremendously, like a great deal in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Let's end it there. That was awesome. The You're absolutely right. It's not going to be easy, but usually the best things are the hardest things. Not always, but often.
Exactly.
And as a runner, you know that in your bones. But keep me posted on the prospect of in what I can do to help.
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty well connected with athletics, but I can be more connected. And we need to continue to build those bridges between faculty and student athletes. And I appreciate your willingness to be one of those bridge people. It's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I just want to help the university itself and the community. And whatever I can do to help, I'd be more than willing to lend a hand.
Well, we appreciate it, especially. I mean, you're still a new guy in town, but here you are making this change, and so yeah, we appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership on it, and look forward to what's coming. I have a feeling some good things are coming.
Absolutely. Take care.